to accept here it is. But if anybody has like any questions or concerns, you can let us know. My name is Morgan. I'm going to get us started with some introductions and some icebreakers. So I'm one of the HH admin. As I said, my name is Morgan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from St. Louis, but I live here in Columbus. I will first pass it over to the other admin to introduce themselves. And as we go through, we'll do our name, pronouns, and I think it might be useful for us to talk about like where home is and where we are today, because if I understand correctly, this might be a tri-state ordeal today, covering a few Midwest states, which is really exciting. And then our icebreaker is if just going with the theme of space, science fiction, exciting things. If a UFO came to Earth and invited you to their planet with good intentions, would you make the trip to space? Why or why not? I will send it in the chat. And my answer would have to be yes, because YOLO. And I will pass it on to Stephanie.
Hello, everybody. My name, as you can see here, is Stephanie. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm currently coming to you guys from Illinois. I live like 20 minutes out from Chicago. So that's exciting. It's 4:12 here, so time isn't real. And if a UFO came with good intentions, would I go to space? I feel like right away I was already thinking if it was one of those like Jesus, like leave everything you ever have and your family and like come with me forever situations, or if I could come back. Also, I've been watching a lot of Black Mirror lately, and all the episodes that take place in space haven't ended up too well for anybody. But I'm gonna say yes with the assumption that time will move differently. And I'll get there really quick and be able to come back pretty quick, and it won't end up being like a 10 to 12 year mission. And I'm going to popcorn it to Lauren.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a Hardcover Hotties admin member. I'm so excited to see everybody here and really excited to talk about Solaris with everyone today. I'm from Canton, Ohio, but right now I call Columbus home. And as for our icebreaker question, I think that I literally have to say yes. I don't know if everyone got to the part in Solaris when he's describing the symmetry ads and like the all of that business. But that just sounded really crazy to see with my own two eyeballs. So if I had the opportunity to see something like that, I think I have to go with yes. And also hope that everything ends up okay and I get to come back and see my family and whatnot. But yeah, so I'm gonna pass it off to Ellen.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I use they, she pronouns. Also, Hardcover Hotties admin. I'm in Columbus right now, and I'm from Columbus, so this has always been home. I would go to space if it was for like 3 days, but I'm so scared of just drifting, like the idea of being detached from something and then ending up drifting in space is like so terrifying to me that I don't really know if I could actually handle it. But if it was like in, I don't know, I would do it for a short amount of time, for sure. Okay. I'm going to pass it to Mackie.
Hi, I'm Mackie. I use she, her pronouns. I am in Cincinnati, but I'm house sitting at someone else's house, a Great Dane and two cats. So I'm having a blast here. Um, and yeah, like Ellen said, I would love to be brave and say yes, but I am so scared of space and the ocean. I don't know which more, but I don't know. I just don't. I just makes me kind of sick just thinking about like being out in space. Um, Especially if it's like, I don't know, people I just met, like who are you, aliens? Um, so yeah, that's my final answer is probably not. All right, Douglas.
Thanks, Mackie. Hey everyone, my name is Douglas. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also currently living in Columbus. And if a UFO were to come to Earth and invite me, I feel like now I need something new, I need something different. So I would say I would be hesitant, very hesitant, but I would probably end up saying like, yeah, why not? But also like Stephanie said, I watched that like USS Callister episode of Black Mirror, and I don't know. I don't know. Those space ones really got to me. So that I would have to think it over but I feel like it would. And then I'll popcorn it off to Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also in Columbus. And I think I'm with Ellen. I would do it, but there'd have to be a deadline because I'm pretty picky and I don't know what they eat on those planets, and I'd want to come home and have like spaghetti. And I'll popcorn it to Max.
Hey everybody, I'm Max. I use he, they pronouns. I am from Cincinnati. I live in Columbus now. I would go with the aliens. It would be an adventure. Like I'm putting a lot of faith in Morgan's good intentions qualifier, but I trust her. And I'll popcorn it to has Grace gone yet?
Hi, my name is Grace. I use they, them pronouns, and I am from Baltimore originally, currently in St. Louis. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I would probably be too scared. I feel like it might be different if like a friend was with me or something. I don't know. I think I would just be worried that I could like not like my like perception would be so shifted that I could like never connect to humans again or something. But I also am reminded of, I feel like all the alien news lately I've been like seeing this article circulating on my Instagram, the like headline that's just like, what if the aliens are hot? So I feel like I have to throw that out there too. I'll popcorn to August.
Hi, I'm August. I use he, him pronouns. I am from roundabout Cincinnati area, but I'm in Columbus at the moment. And I don't know, I'm really like tossing this around in my head, this question, because like I have loved the show Doctor Who since I was like a wee child. And like they seem to have a lot of fun in space, but also like thinking about like actual astronauts in space, like it kind of seems like the worst. So I don't know. If it's like Doctor Who, then yes. But if I actually have to like go in a spaceship and like be in like the zero gravity and eat the weird food and stuff, then no. I will pass it to Jennifer.
Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Columbus and I'm in Columbus. And if a UFO came to Earth and invited me to their planet, good intentions, would I make? Yeah, under one condition, just like everyone else, it has to be forever. Bills are expensive, and if you don't take care of your stuff, then you have to, like, I don't know, rent a unit. But how do you rent a unit? I don't know any of that, and you still have to pay for all of that, and you can't like pay your bills if all you're doing is just looking at all these billions of stars and you have no income to pay those bills. So I want to leave everything behind, all of it. Good luck with those student loans, and just be in space for literally ever. Is anyone else left?
I think that's everybody. And thank you guys so much for your insight. That was really good points. Grace, you ate with that. What if they're hot point? Because what if they are? We don't know. Or they could be an ocean, like what we read in Solaris. But we have a couple of discussion questions that we prepared today, that I think Morgan is going to drop into the chat for you guys to reference back to. But we can just go ahead and get started with our general like ideas about Solaris, and whether you guys have like explored sci-fi or not, or if this like met your expectations of like what sci-fi could be, if this is a new genre for you.
Would you be able to repeat what you just said?
Yeah, of course. Also, let me just give some more background to Solaris too, because I realized I forgot to do that. But again, in case you hit the wrong Zoom link, we're here to talk about Solaris by Stanisław Lem. And oh, it makes me disappear. But yeah, this book is basically about getting us to question our ideas of what it means to have extraterrestrial contact, our own perceptions of ourselves, what communication really means, and just humans like experiences like with relating to the things unknown. This was definitely a very interesting book for me to jump into personally, because I don't have too much experience reading a lot of sci-fi books. I feel like I've seen a couple sci-fi movies, and the one that like stuck with me the most that I kept like mentally like referencing back to was Arrival. If you guys have like seen that movie. But yeah, I was really just like taken aback by the idea that an ocean and like membranes, like different forms of what extraterrestrial like contact can look like, and what it probably, if it ever gets to that point, like what it would likely be. I feel like we're already so like fed like these images of what alien quote like aliens look like, which is just like a reimagination of like human forms. So this was like an interesting and like challenged a lot of like my own perceptions. So yeah, the question that I had for you guys was whether this like your general thoughts about the book and whether or not this like met up to like your expectations to either like other sci-fi narratives you guys have explored before, or lived up to maybe like your first dip into sci-fi.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but like I have always loved Doctor Who, so I've like watched like a lot of sci-fi and like a little bit of Star Trek. And like, yeah, it was really interesting to have like a form of life that is like completely like not like anthropomorphized, I guess, except for like the, you know, the visitors. But even then, like those aren't like the ocean being like a living creature, I think was really interesting. And it kind of like is interesting how like when you try to like envision it, like it just like it like I don't know, at least in my head, like it's really hard to like imagine it as like being like an alien, because like all of like the aliens that I've usually like seen in like sci-fi shows are, even if they don't look like humans, they're like sort of anthropomorphized, like they talk and like have faces and things. And yeah, this book was crazy.
I also have just recently started getting into sci-fi. I read 2001: A Space Odyssey earlier this year. So I kept kind of comparing it to that book. I really enjoyed it. It was such a coincidence. I mean, it was a coincidence for me that you all chose this book, because I had watched a movie like the day before it got announced, and the movie was great. And so I was like, okay, it's going to be interesting to read the book now, because I saw the movie, and I think it definitely added more to it. And it kind of, I don't know, I like I said, I really enjoyed the movie too, so it just kind of extended that. But yeah, I also thought the idea of the ocean was so interesting, and it felt in the movie it's like from the 70s, so like I don't know, it's hard to make cosmic sci-fi anyway, I think, just visually, but they didn't really get into the ocean. Like in the very last part of the book, Chris was down in the ocean and like in the caves and stuff, and that part was super interesting to me. And I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting.
I think it's like cool how the book kind of has this like this intelligent life form that is like the ocean, which is like hard for like us to like kind of comprehend as like an intelligent life form in the same way that like we are. And then also it has like the humanoid kind of like visitors, and then kind of I thought that it was interesting how it examined like the Solarists, like the scientists, kind of their like how they kind of conceptualized like what is like an intelligent living creature and what is not, because like they were like the visitors like aren't human, we can kill those because like they're not human, they're not like actually alive, but then like the ocean is alive. It was very interesting the way that it kind of like explored that like kind of dichotomy of like what is alive and what like deserves to be alive almost, and like what doesn't.
I totally agree with that. I feel like this was one of my first experiences reading science fiction. I've like seen a lot of sci-fi movies, but I haven't like ever actually fully like read any sci-fi novel. And I think that this also brought up a lot of like and also I did see Oppenheimer recently, so ethics and science were just on the brain. But this brought up a lot of like really interesting, there's a lot of ethical dilemmas like throughout the whole thing, especially when there's also, this is kind of like highlighted in the questions. But they're on the cusp of like discovery the whole time. And like I think it that was one of the main parts that stuck out to me, is kind of like we have these like main characters whose viewpoints we're seeing this whole situation like unfold through, and we're seeing it like as it's happening. So we're understanding like what it's like to be these people like in this situation for the first time, instead of seeing it like after the fact. Because when you're reading like scientific like data or something like that, like that's a different experience than actually being there and like experiencing what's going on. And I thought that was interesting that that was intertwined so heavily.
Yeah, that like also generally speaking, first I read Solaris in a college class a few years ago, and I don't really remember a ton, and I didn't like get to actually revisit it for this, but so that's like hanging out in my head somewhere. And then also like I read like I've like read like a little bit of sci-fi and like seen a little bit more sci-fi. I really like, yeah, like aliens and like space. I think it's like, yeah, really kind of just like along all of the lines that everyone was saying. But that point just made me think too, like about, yeah, I don't know, like I don't know, when you think about like encountering like different like aliens and things like that, like it's like, I don't know, would science even like continue to be relevant if like if we're like having this like huge like emotional encounter with like something that's like so incredibly mind-blowing? It's like, I don't know, it's hard for me to think about like, yeah, like would it still matter? And like I feel like it's like, yeah, just like, yeah, there's like the like want to like scientifically like know something, but then I don't know if like who could actually answer like the icebreaker from today of just like would you go? Like I feel like that's like an infinitely like, I don't know, harder question in some ways too. So that's just what I'm thinking about.
I was also kind of thinking that, where I like when I was reading it, I was like, why are you guys still here? Like this seems like it's kind of like a little bit more than you thought it would be. I feel like I would be like, I'm actually gonna go because I'm in over my head. And so yeah, it was crazy to see them like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like hubris, which I guess makes sense given the time period that this was like written in, that they were just like, yeah, we're going to keep on pushing and trying to figure out what this big, creature is that's like studying us while we sleep. And it's like, get out of there. You don't need to know.
Yeah, that just reminded me, I do think it's really important to like kind of put this in its like historical place, I guess, because it was from 1964. So there's the space race going on. And I also write the author spotlights every month, and I did a lot of research on like World War II basically, because this guy, Stanisław, lived through World War II. This dude. But I think it's important to kind of like see a lot of the things that I was finding and a lot of the research I was reading about, since he's such like a prolific writer and he was so popular, and like just had a really long and lengthy career. There's like a lot of academic literature that's like all about him specifically, and a lot of things talked about like reading his books allegorically more so, and kind of like understanding what parts are kind of like satirical and what he's trying to say by what thing. So I think that's an interesting way to like go about something like this, especially because so much of it was, this is highlighted in discussion questions too, but there's so much like scientific jargon too, that's like some of it's real and some of it's made up. And if it's made up, it's like, well, you made that up for a reason. Like, what are you trying to say? So yeah, I don't know if that was all relevant. I kind of just started rambling, but if anyone has any follow-up thoughts.
One, so we watched the movie right before I started reading this book, and literally like right in the first like 20 minutes of the movie, I remember saying out loud, this is literally giving Frankenstein right now, because I feel like there are like so many stories available about like how far is too far when we look at science, and which is like directly relevant to like what Lauren was saying about probably what Stanislaw experienced during like the time that he was alive. So like exploring these everything that August and Grace were saying, like about how like why were they even there, like what are you even doing, guys, because this is a lot. It's like it's so real, and it's also like it's so mind-boggling to think that somebody is so invested with their whole mind and being in like a scientific project that like the point of it just becomes lost. And like that's what it happened in like Frankenstein. That's what happened in like a lot of like so, a lot of like a lot of stories of that sort. And I think the ethical considerations of this whole project is something that really was really interesting to me. But there's definitely a lot here. There's a lot to uncover in this book, in these 200 pages.
I really like that you brought up Frankenstein there, Morgan. I do watch and read a lot of sci-fi, and I also watch and read a lot of supernatural, and there's a lot of overlap between the two. So like the ocean and the supernatural world, it's not just like vampires and stuff, it's also like gods and putting consciousness into dead beings, whether it's zombies or golems or whatever. So it's like creating that the ocean is its own god. So I like how the book kind of bridges the gap between the supernatural and science fiction. And something that happens in science fiction more often than in the supernatural, although there's cases of that too, like changelings, is clones. And in one of my favorite sci-fi television shows called Eureka, there's this someone's consciousness was uploaded to a computer, and then they have to go and download it to an organic human shaped computer, because when it comes down to it, they cited the French philosopher who stated, "I think, therefore I am." So it was huge to me in the book when she starts realizing that she is something, but she's not a whole thing, because she was only the projection of his own memories, and his own memories are the extremes, the happiest times and the worst times. The regular monotony seems to kind of vanish in the memories. Like, how did someone look when they chewed their food? It's not something that you're going to remember as much as it was when someone slammed the door in your face. That slamming the door is going to hold more water. So she's missing all of the meat. She's got the top and the bottom, and I think the whole book is brilliant.
I think I would say that the author gives a lot of evidence that the projections are real, in the sense that they exist independent of their subjects, because the character Jabarian, who's dead, his visitor remains after he's been dead, and we see them multiple times. And we see through Rhea that this projection is able to make independent decisions, and decisions that conflict with what her I guess, Kelvin's, she's pulled from Kelvin, but she's able to make decisions that are in conflict with what he wants. And I guess I don't know a better way to argue that they're real other than that independence.
Yeah, it's kind of like, because like they I feel like I remember that they like start out as kind of like being kind of flat, like the visitors kind of start out like being pretty flat, and then like they kind of gain more and more consciousness as they like continue to live. So it's like, at what point can you consider them like just like people?
Also going off of both of your points, I was also thinking about how we know that our memories aren't reliable, and in the book Kelvin talks about like how Rhea is pretty much exactly, like he remembers her, like her mannerisms and everything. And I've also been thinking about like whether or not he's a reliable narrator in that point, like if it actually is exactly how she was or if it's how he remembers it. But if it is, if the ocean got it that close, it's, I don't know, the realness seems a little more likely. I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm not exactly sure where I stand on how real they are. But I think that's a really interesting point. It's interesting, going back to what Mackie was saying, what she's coming in already knowing, because I think like he mentions that at the time she would have been like around like 30, but he's getting like if I remember correctly, like around like 19-year-old vision, like a interpretation of like what she was like. So everything that would have happened from the period of like her death to the current, like them meeting again, would have had to like have the gap filled like in between. And as she's developing like those new ideas and like understandings around her, yeah, we see like a lot of like her going out of her way in ways that like deeply upset him, but still doing things that were very like personal to their relationship. Like there was like one part of the book that I thought was like that caught my attention because she was just like, "Oh, I love you," and he's just like so angry. He's like, "I wanted to start screaming," and like the chapter ends, and I'm like, I could just imagine that like level of like frustration also like on his end of trying to come up with that mental interpretation when he's getting such like a live image in front of him, but very obvious like evidence surrounding it that's like pointing to the direction of her and every other visitor not being real. And like just like stuff about like the clothing was all like very interesting. Yeah.
Towards the end, when he has the like basically confrontation with Snow, and he's like, "I'm out, like I want to leave," and he's like, "She's literally going to turn into a pile of ash," and he was like, "No way." I feel like that part kind of, it seemed to me that he kind of like didn't really care if she was real or not anymore. He just wanted to go. And also I feel like I just kept thinking about like being in that situation, the distress that he must feeling and she was being put through all the time was like, so I feel like that has to be considered too, because kind of that goes back to your point, August, too, I think a little bit. Like, is it even worth it at that point? Like, does it even matter if she's like real or not real? Because it's such a horrible situation for the both of them, you know? And I thought that was interesting that he had that in there. And unfortunately, I did not finish the book. I have like literally 20 pages left. So I don't know if my questions will be answered, but Yeah, I think that's another part too, is like the actual like lived experience of dealing with this whole thing from both like sides, because neither of them were obviously really having a good time.
I think it's useful to think about the other characters when you're like, neither one of these characters are having a good time. Because like the first time we see the character of Snow, he's like clearly very worn down and like exhausted. The leader had just killed himself. Like the other guy is not emotionally healthy, it seems, to start with, and is completely isolated and is refuses to talk about anything that's not like strictly business. And so it really seems like nobody is really having a good time. And it's not just like, I don't know that I'd argue that the narrator is reliable. I think Mackie maybe said he was unreliable. And I tend to agree that he's not reliable, but I don't know that we have a reliable person on that in the whole book.
I thought it was really interesting how our icebreaker question went, and I liked the point that Jennifer brought up about like just the real world context of what it would mean to leave. Um, just the whole genre of like sci-fi is excellent world building, which is definitely what I got out of this book. Like as I was reading it, I was contextualizing everything with like all the descriptions, especially going back to the scientific jargon. It was making me like really I was like, yeah, this is all so true right now. I understand like all like the context of like what's taking place here, but it's like demanding for the actual like human beings who are making this journey and like are on this mission to take apart everything that they've ever known in their lives and like encounter they don't know what they're going to encounter. So I love the psychological like interpretations that like come from that, because it takes someone who is like already has been through like enough stuff in their personal life and like has gone through the mental work to where they're justified and like deciding to go on this mission and like channel the rest of what like life can mean for them into like this one singular mission of like learning more from like a whole different environment. And yeah, and other like depictions of sci-fi, that part is like largely like ignored, but here we get like the most physical and like intimate contact of like what that truly means, like in the form of like the visitors and like their own like emotional turmoil. So like that was something that really just like kept my attention, and I just like kept circling back through, because in a way they had already like given up to whatever they were going to experience.
Yeah, I think it's like I was just like, as you were talking, Stephanie, like it reminded me, I was like, oh my God, Annie's like a psychologist, like, which is crazy because like kind of it just seems like so much of the conflict with like the like visitors is sort of that conflict between like being like rational and like emotions. And so I think that it is kind of very interesting that that's also like Chris like is a psychologist, like he kind of studies and quantifies like emotions and the psyche, and but also like he also is like a human being, so like he can't just like step outside of his own self and like not behave in like irrational ways because of like his emotions.
I think that his being like the perspective that we're getting in this book is like his like psychological background and like inquiry. And so in like conversations around like reality and like identity and like personhood and consciousness, like all of these things are framed around his understanding of like what it means to be a person, which is like emotions and memory and like so like when he is like, oh, these are things that only like we would know, or like I remember like she did this, and like that's how we know that like she is as close as you can get to like the real thing. And then like also like the psychological elements are also what like helps him to distinguish like how she is different too. So I thought that was really interesting.
I thought that maybe part of the reason why his visitor was so self-aware was as a result of his psychological background. So because he has so much extensive training in being able to identify smaller little quirks and behavioral patterns, it seemed like that's why his was more self-aware than all the others, and that's why he was chosen to experiment, because if you've gotten this far, how much farther can you still get? What have you still noticed that hasn't yet been discovered by the ocean god creature?
Um, like Stephanie just said, that was a really good point. That's so true. I hadn't even like considered that. And I feel like that's gonna change the game as I continue like just thinking about the book. But something else that I wanted to bring up kind of goes back to Stephanie's point, and I think is related as to like a reason why he might be doing this too, is obviously since we can see there's like a whole like history of Solaris, and there's like just so much, I guess technically pseudo academics like surrounding it too, since they're not literally real, but there's like whole like government funding all of this shit. Like the prestige that would come with being the person to kind of like reinvigorate Solaris studies, and like it's like this unfixable unsolvable problem to everyone, like no one has been able to like understand it, whatever, and they just keep like trekking forward in the hopes that he might be the one that might be able to like finally unlock the puzzle, like solve the problem, like yeah, that kind of thing as well, which I think is interesting to consider. Yeah, true, Morgan. True.
Yeah, I feel like with that, this shows um, a depiction of like the ultimate way to be humbled as like a science, a person who like dedicated their whole life to science. I'm like thinking specifically back to this one part where he locks himself in the room and was like, okay, before I like talk to anybody, I have to make sure I have some sort of explanation. And then he had pages and pages of calculations, and then looks and sees that whoever was there before also had pages and pages of calculations, and they're like literally dead. So he's like, okay, there is no just like using whatever like knowledge, like tool of knowledge I already have in the background to like contextualize this like um new form that's like in front of me. And yeah, what Morgan said, yeah, it is like the arrogance of like humans thinking that they like understand everything and that they will be the ones to like put it into context.
There's literally so much power in knowing, and it's power that breeds destruction. To be like the sole person to know something, and to know something that's like can be used for evil.
do we think that the visitors were supposed to be evil? I kind of got the impression that they were just there, that they didn't really have um, a specific purpose. It was just the ocean trying to experience what the humans were experiencing and doing the best job that it could to understand it, for better or worse. And it wasn't very good at it because it missed that meaty center, all the little quirks that make humans really human. But I never really thought about, are they evil or are they good? I just thought they just were. Maybe I didn't get that part. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't so when I guess I should give some more context to my very big claim that I made. But I don't think that I wouldn't apply any I don't have any sort of moral judgment toward like the planet or like the ocean, because I think it's just like doing its thing. Like I don't think it has any intention to harm. But I was referring to the like just generally like the idea of like scientific inquiry and like the power of like holding powerful knowledge, the power that comes with great power comes great responsibility, but the great power that comes with being the holder of like um world shattering knowledge, like how to build an atomic bomb or how to like understand like natural forces that are unknown to most people like in our world. And I think like saying whether it's good or evil comes with like the ethical considerations of like are like the beings that they're dealing with like human or non-human, and like what is deserving of like um life. But I think it was more so about like I think there's like just it's just crazy to me to think about like to be you're really going to be sitting on your high horse if you're like the only person studying like this one thing that just like could ruin like a lot. It could do good, but like you have to have like I think like that sort of ego boost can really skew your goals and understanding of like just straight facts, if that makes sense, if that answers your question.
I added in a quote that just made me think a lot about again what we were just talking about, like our own like small debate of whether or not like the visitors were like real, but also just contextualizing like what the ocean was like being interpreted as. I added this one quote talking about is it is a planet an enormous mountain, um oh sorry, is a mountain only a huge stone, is a planet an enormous mountain, like trying to decide what things are and like assigning meaning to them. Made me think a lot to the book that we always circle back to, I feel like in every meeting, but Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Will Kimmerer, in her essay of like the grammar of animacy, and what in like Western science like we assign um full like animacy and like consciousness to, and like and along with that like value, because there's just like so much focus on like interpreting the what the visitors were like intending to do when they were interacting with like every person that every like crew member that they were like manifesting in front of. And also, yeah, just like putting the context of the ocean, because I saw Max, you added that like one quote where it was saying that the crew members are being treated like a speck of dust. So either this is just like the natural like reaction to an invasion, or if this was like an element of defense, it's like the probably like a very like the most like genius elements of defense, because like humans can get so caught up in like whatever is the most immediate reflection of themselves. So especially when it has like direct ties to like um things that they're already feeling like very guilty about, and like is keeping up a lot of their psyche anyway.
Yeah, I think what you just said ties really well into the discussion question about um, like what the human like predisposition towards violence is, because basically all of the violence we see in the book is done by the human characters. They end up destroying the visitors. They end up, and it could be argued that they're even responsible for the creation of the visitors in the first place, because we're given a lot of reason to believe that Solaris is one way, and then the appearance of these visitors happened very recently after Jabarian did an experiment where he like blasted the ocean with radiation that the book makes it pretty clear he was not authorized to do or didn't talk to anybody about doing. And obviously the ocean's not very understood, but it can be argued pretty well that throwing massive amounts of radiation at something that we think might be alive is not a cool move. And so that's an act of violence on a planetary scale. And then Kelvin, before he even like assesses the situation properly, immediately basically kills the first Rhea.
I wanted to offer another quote in the chat, follow up to Stephanie's quote, which is, "Man has gone out to explore other worlds and other civilizations without having explored his own labyrinth of dark passages and secret chambers, and without finding what lies behind doorways that he himself has sealed." And I think this relates directly to the conversation about consciousness and what is consciousness, what are conscious beings, and like how do we characterize an ocean as like being a living, as being, and being and living and being conscious. And this is like relating it directly to like here and now. Even like we've learned more than we knew in the 60s when this was written, but like this is like the in like cognitive science and in like philosophy of mind, like consciousness is deemed like the impossible problem, and like it's like something that like how are we ever gonna really understand this like this phenomena that we can't see, and then that we like can't necessarily understand like how we like even experience it. And so to even like apply it to something in on another planet, and like something that's non-human, is like really just mind-boggling. And it also goes back to that, like how are we to understand problems of that caliber when we haven't taken the time to understand like our own experiences and relationships to these things. And yeah, that was definitely the most like interesting piece of the book for me. Just like identity, like personal identity and consciousness and stuff. And yeah, if I have some things, if you guys want to read, if you want to read more about it.
That was just such a good point that I'm literally cowering in fear to follow up on that. um, but I will. I'll go for it. Um, yeah, I am looking forward to you sending the things. And also sharing it with everyone else who wasn't able to come to the meeting. But one of the things that I found myself circling back to that was like just another big topic was the idea of communication and just how much like writing and having reference to events in the past like makes such a big difference. And I feel like that's um it puts into like perspective like how much documentation matters and like for who, because just looking back there where they're like exploring like the transcript, um where the president is listening in on one of the past crew members interpretations and is like kind of hesitant to share more information on um the quote hallucinations that like he's been seeing like throughout the mission, and finally he does give just a little bit of reference of that happening, and then the end of like the transcript is the president being like, okay, so I kind of just want to cross out that last point and reach the conclusion that it's like a symptomatic hallucination caused by atmospheric poisoning and all this stuff. And yeah, basically just like writing everything that the crew member is sharing like off, but the transcript is like still available, and it just makes you really like wonder the amount of like information that wasn't available to put to like have like an idea or like try to make sense of like what is like already in front of you, because every person who is encountering like this type of environment again is going to be starting from the beginning and remaking the same discoveries. And that's what we see, like a lot of people thinking that they're like discovering things, but they're discovering like the same information again and again. And it just thinking about that and putting it in the real world and just all the information that is lost in things like past like archives or things that were like deemed like unimportant that make up our own history and our own world building as like people now, because we're never going to be able to like go back and understand things, but people have like gone in and done like extreme like archive work and uncovered just so much information. I feel like this maybe every person, every past lifetime people have been able to say this, but in my lifetime I feel like I've been able to especially like with the internet come across so much information that is a complete unlearning of everything that I've known in the past, especially in the context of like history. Like I remember my first time reading like a people's history of like the United States, and being like, oh my god, like why is no one talking about this? This is not what I learned in like my like high school like history class. And yeah, it's two very different contexts of like documentation, but it just like very directly like mirrored what my own like experience has been with that. So I thought that was interesting.
I thought they were deliberately omitted. The missing files, the bad conclusions, I thought that they were deliberately omitted because with these either hallucinations or biological manifestations, just like she committed suicide, and the strongest emotions are tied with those of trauma, and they've all been dead. So I figured, I mean, I guess I just assumed, I guess I took a big leap in my interpretation of the book that they were rediscovering only because the last person, after having to relive such a traumatic experience, was like, you know what, I don't actually want anybody to know about this, so I'm just gonna tear these pages up and throw them in a fire. And so they were deliberately missing. but I could have been taking a huge leap in that.
Either way, I think it's like still an interesting thing to think about for sure. I don't really know if I have like a solid answer on what my interpretation of the missing files were, but I think that's totally like a justifiable way to think about it. Because would you really want someone going through that? Like probably not, I would hope. But yeah, I did think about like the kind of like archival system going on through this whole thing as well, and like what they were keeping track of and what not, and also thinking about like public reception and how that played into the research going on, basically, because there's a part kind of towards the end where he goes through the whole history of Solaritics, I think is the name of like the branch of study. But he's like, oh yeah, people like the general public was really interested in it because they're hearing XYZ thing. Like no one from the general public is experiencing it, is like going out there and like seeing any of it, but they're hearing about it and they're like, whoa guys, this is literally crazy. We want to read more and we want to learn more. So it's getting funded more. So they were able to keep going and keep doing research. And then as soon as they fell off, he was like, they like fell off. The public was like, actually never mind, we're bored. And research stopped. So yeah, that's just thinking. And obviously the people that were interested in it must not have, well, I guess I don't remember this part of the book very well, but I wonder what, yeah, I think that there's definitely like a gap between reading about something like this versus experiencing it firsthand, and that like translation that's happening is just fascinating. In this book kind of, I think that that's important to think about, or it definitely brings it up, and there probably are definitely real world examples of that too in the greater scientific realm. Morgan, what's so funny?
I was thinking that you were like, this is real. Like, I'm sure there are real world experiences of like people experiencing this, and I was like, literally no way. Like of like the like just people like the mimoids appearing everywhere, and I was like, what? No, they can't. Because
Yeah.
literally like something like this, if we were to hear about this like IRL, like this is literally inconceivable. Like, and that's why like something like this is so, it would have been so easy to write it off as like, oh, they're cray, like don't listen to them, like this isn't hashtag real science. But it's like it's so true, like they were experiencing this, they were documenting it, and but it's like we cannot conceive of like being confronted with like a being of that sort and like being able to characterize it. And that's why it's so baffling for the general public, I'm sure, to be hearing of things of this sort going about in outer space. But Max, I saw you unmuted. Sorry if I interrupted.
No, that was really good. I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Jennifer said, because yeah, there's missing information, but we've seen the current scientists on the station lie about information and simply not write things down that they did. And so I guess it circles back to just like this unreliability of everybody involved. It's like, does it matter that we don't have a complete picture because people are lying, people are leaving things out? Do we already have a complete picture in its incompleteness.
In real life, there is something that happens that's just like this. If you twist it to the supernatural, people talk all the time about seeing ghosts of loved ones, about being about being visited by their beloved grandmother. I mean, there are psychics who literally make a living on it. It does happen, and we do kind of call them crazy. We do.
That's true. And again, literally had not even thought of that before. But like that is true. I'm sure. I mean, I feel like I've definitely been told ghost stories before, you know, like by people that I know or whatever. But I think that um it goes back to the whole question too of like how are we to tell like what is scientifically viable or not as human beings? You know what I mean? Like, do we have how much authority do we really have when we're saying, like, yes, this is a real scientifically viable thing that can happen versus not, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like, well, maybe this is implicit in what you're saying, but just I feel like that expands based like this is building on what everyone has said, but just like, yeah, not just like in science, but also just like in like life. Like, I don't know, like what do we like, yeah, believe in people and what don't we?
By the end of the book, sorry, Lauren, Kelvin does kind of loop all the way back around to spirituality. So I'm not sure what the book is trying. I would love to hear somebody talk about the ending. I have no idea how to talk about the ending, but if anybody has a way to, that would be great. I just wanted to say that it is interesting that this scientific guy just ends up back at religion and the supernatural.
Yeah, I think kind of it kind of examines like the way that like there's only so far that like human science can go, and like I guess kind of the way that Chris is like like he's kind of like seen that firsthand, and like he's kind of like he's been kind of forced to like confront that there's things that are kind of unknowable and just things that like you can never understand, and he kind of yeah yeah, and then he's just like yeah, and that's very like Lovecraftian kind of, to be like the horror is that I have no idea what this thing is.
That's literally so true and circles us back to another epic hardcover hotties moment with Junji Ito's Gyo, when we were talking about cosmic horror, and like what is so scary in cosmic horror is like the unknowable, and it's like super existential and like oh like yeah. One of the big things that we were talking about in Gyo that was so scary was that like they don't know where any of this is coming from, but you're like being forced to deal with all of the consequences anyways, like within your known world, no matter where the horror comes from. And I also do think that there's like this is kind of that was part A, this is part B. I think that there's kind of like a certain humility that comes with that, and like understanding that like yeah, maybe I am not going to figure out all of this, and I just need to kind of like accept that it exists and I won't know everything, and that's fine, you know.
That's the quote from, well, part of it, because it's like a long part of the book, but like kind of the quote where he's like talking about like spirituality. Yeah, which also kind of, now that I'm looking at it again, kind of ties it back to the whole science discussion, the discussion of like, what if, you know, somebody could just kind of endlessly create things but wouldn't be able to have like the omniscience to be able to tell like the consequences of their actions, which is like, yeah.
Sorry to bring it back to Frankenstein, but this quote is like literally that. Just like everybody loves, all the smart people love to play God. And does it ever work well? Not usually. Like, it doesn't usually turn out well for them.
I think that there's an interesting break between like, now we're talking about like creating something, and like Frankenstein is a lot about like creation, and Solaris is more so about research, I feel. Maybe research is the wrong word, but I think that there's, yeah, it's interesting to think about like in terms of science, creating something versus investigating something and experimentation and stuff like that, because those two kind of go together a little bit low key, but I think the end product or end goal is different for both.
I thought the creation was more of the perspective of the ocean versus the scientists. And I actually debated that personally throughout the book, whether the ocean was creating or trying to communicate. So there's this really old episode of South Park where they go into outer space, and the alien representative presents himself as Stan's dad, and like, this is weird, not sure. So then he kept going through all of these different characters before choosing one that they appreciated. He tried like Santa Claus and other people. He tried monsters, until finally he ended up with one where the alien felt that he could communicate with the boys, because the boys just needed to understand. And it ended up being a taco that poops ice cream. But regardless, so the taco that pooped ice cream in this case would be the ocean, and the ocean, I thought, maybe was just doing a really crappy job of communicating, and it never really got its message across. So maybe the ocean was creating and trying to be a god and was modeling its little toys after these human and scientific invaders. Or maybe it was just trying to say something and it just did a lousy job.
From what I understand of the physics, the science around Solaris, I feel like the ocean really does need a subject, like the researcher, the scientist, somebody to like experience, somebody to listen in order to create. So they were doing that in tandem, from what I think. Like they were like doing like the ocean needed something else and to extract from and to experience what it was creating. So it was like they were both kind of creating together. And as like a researcher, like he was like creating this being in a way that he understood. Like it was like I think that's how I was understanding creation in this story, if that makes sense. But yeah, go ahead.
I kind of thought that it was pretty random because like the I forget what the name of it was, but like when it like builds like the whole city in the middle of the ocean and then just like tears it down. So like the visitors were like created like, you know, from the thoughts of the people, but I feel like my interpretation was that like the ocean is going to create things randomly whether or not the people are there. And so it's almost like, which is like crazy that like the researchers are there and it's recounting like these horrible traumatic things for them, and it's literally just because they're there.
I think it's reasonable that the ocean doesn't even realize that, like, the idea of separateness doesn't even occur to it because it's existed for however long as the only thing in its everywhere, and then suddenly other stuff shows up, and so it probably just thinks of it as another extension of itself. And there's not really any qualms with creating or reflecting or experimenting because that's me.
Yeah, I thought that part was super crazy. And I kind of agree that I don't know. This is a difficult question about whether the ocean kind of like needs an audience or not. I think for the visitors, I think the visitors are different from like the mimoids, like that. I think those are two different processes that are going on. But I did think it was really interesting how it was talking about that as like a performance. And I think that quote's like super fascinating too. It's like a performance that the scientists don't understand. And I think that's interesting when we like zoom out and you think about that more so in the context of like science versus art generally. But yeah, because I thought the description, obviously my answer to the UFO question, I thought the description of like the building and destructing when they're talking about all like the fragments and the spirals and the columns of like gel and stuff was just really freaking crazy. And would be crazy to see in real life. And I do think it's really interesting to think about it as like creating it is like a performance, I guess, for the ocean. And we don't really know the purpose of it. But that also has like, it obviously has to have some kind of like merit for the ocean to be doing it, I guess, no matter if we like really understand that or not on a scientific level.
I mean, did you guys find yourself feeling like sympathetic or relating to like any of the characters, or were you kind of just like, who are you guys just made the biggest mistakes? Like I get to read and watch you like pay for it. Like what was like your guys' relationships to like the characters? Okay, I'll go first. I was thinking a lot about Aurea and just like a lot of her expressions of fear. I remember thinking like I was like kind of like sympathizing like in that sense because I was like if I woke up and everything was different and someone who like in my head was like the person I was in a long-term relationship was looking at me with like a sense of like suspicion and trying to figure out how to like undo my existence and but also like lying to me about it because like she would literally be like um so from what I'm hearing you say, even though you're trying to keep it a secret, I'm not real. What are you gonna do about that? Please don't kill me. I just was like, oh, I feel really bad for quote her, because that must be actually terrifying. And from my reading of the book, she was feeling like the interpretation was that she was feeling like genuine fear. And yeah, that was very like trippy to read.
Yeah, I think that her character definitely like by him using a character that was so emotionally related to Kelvin, like deeply, I think that kind of like changed the game for me a little bit, you know. I feel like in other science fiction like movies that I think of or like things like that, a lot of times you don't really see like the subject of an experiment, I guess, have like such a deep emotional capacity. And I think that that changes things when we were thinking about like experimentation and all of the things that come along with it. And like all of the possible negatives and drawbacks. And also her character reminded me of Blade Runner. Literally me just saying that I haven't seen any other representations like this, but Blade Runner was, I think that that is like a relevant and accurate comparison here.
I think I find it pretty hard to be sympathetic towards Kelvin because you have this person who had this really, really big loss that he feels partially responsible for, but that he spent, I think it's like 11 years basically not processing to the point that he leaves the planet. He gets the perfect opportunity to process it and then doesn't. And then we see this person who was literally born yesterday do a really good job of processing really complex emotional stuff to the point that her last words to him is not to hurt himself and that he's been amazing. And that he still can't, like he can't move on even with that. It kind of baffles me, and it's really hard to like drudge up sympathy for the guy.
I agree. I feel the same way, but for a different reason. I don't think that. So I don't feel sympathy for him because I don't think that he could process it. The image that I got out of his portrayal onto her. So if she was just a manifestation of his memories, I get that she can figure things out to much of his surprise. She says things like, I think I'm supposed to be sad, but she doesn't quite understand why or how or if. I think he just didn't understand her from the first place. It makes sense to me that she was actually quite smart. She was a brilliant person with a lot of energy and a lot of vigor. And when he actually thinks about the memories, she's not just sad, she's angry. She has way more animation than his projection does. So it's like he missed that entire dynamic about her. And if she killed herself because she didn't think that he was giving her the right attention, not gonna lie, I see her point. It doesn't sound like he did give her much attention, that he did really understand her. It's a projection, and he still got it wrong. I don't think that it was good because I don't think he could. Dude was a numbskull from the start.
We're probably going to start wrapping up soon. If anybody has some final comments, thoughts, questions that they'd like to raise, and yeah.
I was just thinking I would be like, I don't know, I would love to have gotten more into the other visitors personalities and stuff too, just because, you know, Rhea is like our only reference. Like the other visitors aren't really given character development or personalities or anything. So I just would have been interested to see more about that. And I remember also like watching the movie. It's obviously different, but it's like, I don't know, for some reason seeing it as it's like this 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl in a room full of cold scientists. It's like really, it's kind of hard to watch in the movie. Oh yeah, the movie is from 72, I believe. It's a Soviet film by Tarkovsky, who's like a really amazing director, but you can definitely see, yeah. You can definitely see like, I don't know. I feel like the way that women especially are portrayed is like, I don't know, it's just classic. It's just like when she's actually like very intelligent and smart, and well, those are synonyms, but it's just like, I don't know, it's more palpable in the movie to me, but it's also like you can see how, you know, Calvin just completely ignores her and like how she's feeling. Yeah, and the Stephanie, that's true. And like in the book too, it's like you're gonna use that word. Okay, that's fun. That's really interesting. And she's not in the movie at all, which is super interesting. So yeah, explain that, Tarkovsky / Stanisław. Yeah, but that's just like another element. I would have loved to get more into that side of things, like having additional visitors. And I also was curious, like I imagine that the other visitors were also people who had passed away, but it never said for sure, if I remember. I know it was kind of like based in memory, but you know, there you can remember someone who's still alive. So I was just, yeah, I don't know. I had a couple questions. But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that. Just some thoughts.
Okay, so I guess that brings us to the end of our discussion of Solaris. Thank you everyone for your time. and attention and consideration. Much to think about. We'll be thinking about this for a long while, but before we leave for the evening, we wanted to talk to you guys about our next book of the month, which I believe our lovely admin team member Ellen will be announcing. Yeah, and also about Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, which is coming up, but I'll pass it over to Ellen to introduce our August book of the month.
So sorry, guys. Sorry. For August, we are going to be reading Boys Run the Riot by Kyoto Gaku?
Keito Gaku.
Kato Gaku? Okay. And we are doing this because we are collaborating with CXC to sorry guys, there's so many people just walked into my house and I got like a big brain fart. But we chose this book for the CXC event, and the author of the book is going to be at like a signing event, and we've been working closely with Jay, the executive director.
Yeah, we're super excited about Boys Run the Riot. It's Keisugako's first time being in the United States, and like first appearance. So we chose this book because we like really wanted to take advantage of that opportunity. And Cartoon Crossroads Columbus is going to be happening. I believe it's the weekend of October 13th. So it's the 13th through the 15th. It's a free 3-day long comics, art, and animation festival right here in Columbus, Ohio. But there's festivities going on all weekend. Lots of artist talks. They have so many special guests coming in, and tickets are going to be available. Oh, did I literally get the date wrong? Is it the last weekend of September? It's the last weekend of September. Pretend I did not say anything about October. But yeah, there's lots of free events and lots of special artist talks. There's so many great creators coming to Columbus for it specifically. So yeah, we would love for you guys to attend the festival and take advantage of that. I will send their website in the chat right now so you can get looking and see who all is going to be there. There's a lot of great artists there right now. They have tickets available for Raina Telgemeier, who I don't know if anybody read Smile when they were younger, but she's going to be doing a talk, and tickets are available through, I believe it's the Wex's website, but you can get to it through Cartoon Crossroads website. Everything's free also. And then also Daniel Close or Klaus, I am not sure how to say it, but he wrote Ghost World, if anybody has read or seen the movie. So they're going to be doing an event with him also that you can get tickets for through the website. So yeah, we'll be announcing like more special events as CXC releases their schedule, but we're super excited for the opportunity and super excited to actually attend the festival. I haven't been before, so yeah, I'm stoked about it, and hopefully y'all are too.
Yes, thank you, August, for dropping in the link on digital access. We also have Bookspace Columbus that's going to be ordering some physical copies for you guys to pick up very soon, and some really exciting information about just like the plot and the world that we're going to be diving into for this manga. So we're following Ryo as he is navigating his transgender identity and the world of Japanese street fashion. So this is going to be lots of cool things that we can like learn about. And so something
that very often that happened when this book was being translated was that wait, Morgan, how do you say the author's name again? Sorry.
Gaku.
Keitu Gaku. Keitu
Kato.
Keito Gaku. Got a team of all transgender individuals to do the translation for the English version of this book, which is just awesome. And we're just really excited to be able to collaborate with such a great creator and have the opportunity to see like everyone else that is like involved in the comics world. So this is going to be great, and we're going to have more information rolling out. So stay tuned and keep up with our Instagram updates.
Two more things before we let y'all go for TN to have a good rest of your Sunday night. Last meeting we started ending our meetings with going through our values like as a group, and this was inspired by the No Name Book Club branch, Columbus branch, which is organized by the organization Black Men Build. And at the end of the book club meeting, they did this really cool thing where they went through the organization's values just to kind of like remind us like why we're here and like why we're doing this sort of thing. So the four of us are each gonna like go through one of our values, and we've deemed these our pedagogical principles. So like our guiding principles for like as learners. And I will go ahead and start out with our first one is community and creative collaboration. So as a group, we recognize that collective interdependence is fundamental to the livelihood and liberation of everyone in a social and political environment where individualism has largely advanced as the status quo. And community breeds creative thought through like constructive and positive feedback. And it's these types of relationships and partnerships that we engage in that are like creatively constructed and inspire radical change that precipitates the imagining of an ideal community space and the systems, worlds, and lives outside of those that are traditionally used to dominate.
And then for our second one is making Hardcover Hotties a radically alternative space. So with that, we really just want to draw back to the understanding that there are often a lot of institutional shortcomings that happen, probably like in our own like educational experiences, either through like university or like high school experiences, where being like vulnerable and like ready to learn can leave like people feeling like hurt, harm, or like defeated. And we're trying to create a radically alternative space, which for us is like an ideal environment that like operates as an ideal environment where we take like unconventional approaches and try to prioritize care and compassion and education across difference as we're trying to like explore new topics together.
So our next principle or guiding value is friendship, or is that we view friendship as care work. So we understand that educational environments often demand a level of vulnerability from everyone as we share personal anecdotes, share our thoughts on the topics at hand. And in understanding these relationships as friendships, missteps and imperfections allow for moments of amiable support to emerge and persist throughout relational exchanges. So for us, friendship is active and encompasses earnest dedication to the creation and maintenance of safe and inclusive educational spaces where both new and old friends feel valued, heard, and respected, and all those who enter our spaces are held accountable to similar standards. We also understand that friendship is purely nurturing and compassionate, and to strive for a meaningful connection like this encompasses care in its strongest sense and claims responsibility for the essential labor of patient time and intentional effort that's fundamental to loving friendship. And we believe that empowerment and mutual growth manifest themselves through the excitement that individuals bring when learning becomes lighthearted and intrinsically motivated.
And the final principle is intention and integrity. We are defining the group as practitioners whose habits embody the work with which we interact. It is through observation of purposeful and deliberate action and interaction that our dedication to intention and integrity is recognized as honesty, transparency, and sincerity. That is grounded in strong moral virtue to which we are deeply committed. With integrity recognizing responsibility and power held, and actively working to dismantle accountability as a tool that could be used to shame or make people feel insecure, and redefining this as a positive mechanism through which we support one another in personal growth and we assume that holding people accountable is done with kindness and goodwill.
And lastly, I'm gonna leave you guys with a really fun and fast and easy Google form that I will be dropping in the chat. I know, thank you to those of you who have completed it and have offered your thoughts and kind words. But as we have been, as we grow and learn more about how we can better ourselves, like as a group, gaining this like feedback and constructive criticism from like our members and the people who interact with the club in any sort of way is really, really useful. And we're hoping to gather like testimonials that we can hopefully add to our website. Woo! And do all sorts of fun things. So there's like a little question about like if you're willing to do like an in-person or online interview like for our YouTube as well. That would be awesome. And we'll contact you later if you indicated that that would be something that you're interested in. The link is there for those of you who have not completed it, and we appreciate your time immensely. And that is all that I have for you. Friends, do we have anything else? Okay. In that case, have a beautiful rest of your Sunday night, and thank you all so much for being here. This was so fun.
Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna try not to have scary dreams after this.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Have the most awesome Sunday ever.